Have you ever wondered if your generosity might be hurting your children? Imagine you're about to retire and you want to make sure your children have a good future. But what if I told you that there are 7 things you should never give them for their own good? You'll be surprised by the latest revelation. But before we start, I want you to pay close attention to this story because it will be very important for you to understand the big lesson of this video. Elena, a newly retired woman brimming with excitement to help her children, planned to give them money and property, convinced that this was the best way to ensure their welfare. Sound familiar? But before Elena could put her plan into action, her neighbor, the wise Don Javier, issued a warning that perplexed her. "Elena," he told her in a calm voice, "sometimes giving too much can be like overwatering a plant. Instead of helping it grow, you could be choking it." Could it be possible that Elena's generosity was about to become a trap for her children? Before we continue, if you find value in these videos, please subscribe and click the bell to stay updated. Elena, with a heart overflowing with love and the best of intentions, decided to give Carlos a considerable sum of money after his retirement. "You can finally fulfill your dreams," she told him excitedly. But what Elena didn't know was that she was about to trigger a series of events that would change Carlos's life forever. Carlos, thrilled by this unexpected stroke of luck, decided to quit his job. Why keep trying, he thought. And so, without realizing it, he fell into the trap of easy money. What seemed like a blessing quickly turned into a curse. This phenomenon, known as the rich heir syndrome, is not as unusual as you might think. In fact, it's so common that it even has a name in psychology. Dr. Roy Williams, author of Preparing Your Kids for $1 Billion, states that 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation and 90% by the third. But why does this happen? Well, imagine you were given a huge cake every day. At first you'd be thrilled, right? But over time, not only would you lose interest in baking, but you'd probably develop a number of health problems. Money works in a similar way. The famous psychologist Abraham Maslow once said, "If the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail." In Carlos's case, his new tool was money, and suddenly, all his problems seemed to have a monetary solution. He lost the ability to face challenges, to grow, to find satisfaction in personal achievement. But all is not lost. As the saying goes, it's better to teach a fish to fish than to give a fish away. Elena could have chosen to teach Carlos financial skills, foster his entrepreneurial spirit, or even invest in a business together. These options would not only have provided financial support, but also valuable life lessons. The philosopher Seneca, more than 2,000 years ago, already warned about the dangers of wealth without wisdom. "It is not the man who has little, but he who craves more, who is poor," he said. Charles had much, but in losing his purpose, he found himself poorer than ever. Are you thinking of giving a great gift to your children? Before you do, ask yourself, am I giving them a safety net or a gilded cage? Am I providing them with a springboard to achieve their dreams or a comfortable couch where their ambitions will sleep? Remember, the real gift is not the money itself, but the tools to create it, multiply it, and use it wisely. As the tycoon said, Warren Buffett, "I will leave enough money for my children to do something, but not so much that they do nothing." Let's go now to the trap of gifted properties. Imagine the scene. Elena, recently retired and brimming with good intentions, decides to surprise her daughter Anna with a gift that, at first glance, seems straight out of a fairy tale. "Honey, I want to give you our summer house on the beach. It's yours now." Anna, excited, already sees herself enjoying long afternoons in front of the sea. But what if this dream turns into a financial nightmare? As the philosopher Seneca once said, "He is not poor who has little, but he who desires much." And boy, was Anna on the verge of wishing she hadn't received that gift. What Elena didn't consider were the hidden costs that came with that property: annual taxes, constant maintenance, unexpected repairs. Suddenly, that dream home became a bottomless pit that devoured Anna's savings. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This scenario is not as unusual as you might think. In fact, a recent study showed that inherited properties often become family bone of contention. Sound familiar? Well, get ready, because the Martinez's story is going to blow your mind. The Martinezes were the epitome of a close-knit family until their grandfather passed away and left them his old house. What seemed like a gesture of love became a battleground. Who would pay for the repairs? Who would live there? Should they sell it? Family gatherings went from moments of joy to sessions of shouting and slamming doors. In the end, the property that was supposed to unite them ended up dividing them. Now, don't get me wrong, giving away property is not inherently bad. The problem arises when you don't consider the big picture. As psychologist Abraham Maslow would say, if you only have a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. And in this case, the hammer is the good intention, but the problem is much more complex than a single nail. The key is financial education. Before gifting property, it is crucial to make sure the recipient is prepared to handle it. Does he or she have the means to maintain it? Does he or she understand the responsibilities involved? Has he or she considered the tax implications? Going back to Elena and Anna, imagine if instead of simply giving the house away, Elena had involved Anna in the decision-making process. They could have explored options together, sell the property and split the proceeds, create a fund for its upkeep, or even turn it into a family vacation rental business. Open communication and joint planning could have transformed this potential disaster into an opportunity for family growth. As the philosopher Epictetus wisely said, wealth does not consist in having great possessions, but in having few needs. Perhaps the real gift is not the property itself, but the lessons in financial responsibility and family communication that can come from these situations. Let's go back to Elena's story. Elena, with all her good intentions, has always been there to solve every problem that came their way. From small conflicts at school to major decisions in adult life, Elena has been the superhero who came to the rescue. Sounds nice, doesn't it? But as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It turns out that this practice has a name: helicopter parenting. And no, it's not about parents flying around in fancy helicopters, although that would be pretty funny. It refers to parents constantly flying over their children's lives, ready to land and solve any problems that arise. But what's the problem with being so attentive and helpful? Well, imagine you're in a gym. You have a personal trainer who, instead of teaching you how to lift weights, lifts them for you. Do you think you would gain muscle? Of course not. In the same way, when we solve all of our children's problems, we are robbing them of the opportunity to develop their emotional muscles and problem-solving skills. A study conducted by the University of Florida revealed something surprising. Young adults raised by overprotective parents tend to have a harder time handling the stresses and strains of everyday life. It's as if we gave them a map to navigate life, but took away their compass. Returning to our friend Elena, she began to notice something strange. Carlos, her oldest son, seemed unable to make decisions on his own. Whenever he faced a challenge at work, he would call Elena in a panic. Anna, on the other hand, avoided any situation that might prove difficult. The thought of moving out on her own or looking for a new job paralyzed her with fear, and Luis, the youngest son, and our new character in the story, grew up watching how his mother handled Carlos's crises. Although she tried to be more independent, Elena always found a way to help even when she wasn't asked. Psychologist Alfredo Oliva explains, overprotection may seem like love, but in reality it is fear. Fear that our children will suffer, fear that they will fail. But failure and suffering are an essential part of learning and growth. So what can we do? Should we just let our children crash into every obstacle? Not exactly. The key is to find balance. As the philosopher Khalil Gibran once said, your children are not your children. They are sons and daughters of life desirous of itself. What we can do is offer them support within our capabilities when they are in trouble, but without overdoing it. It's like teaching them to ride a bike, first with training wheels, then holding the seat, and finally letting them pedal on their own. Yes, they may fall a few times, but those falls are what will teach them to keep their balance. Elena decided to take a step back. The next time Carlos called her about a problem at work, instead of giving her the solution, he asked her, "What do you think you should do?" With Anna, she began to encourage her to face small challenges, celebrating each small triumph. And with Luis, we'll see what happens later. Before continuing with the story, if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel with the bell so you don't miss future videos. And if you enjoy this kind of content as much as I do, comment, "I love these stories." By the way, also comment what you would like to see in the next videos. I read all your comments. Let's keep learning together and improving our lives. Get ready to discover how the desire to help can become an invisible trap in family relationships. Elena, our protagonist, found herself in this situation without realizing it. After retiring, she thought she had all the wisdom in the world to share with her children. What a surprise she got. Imagine the scene. Elena, with the best of intentions, bombarding her children with advice about every aspect of their lives. Luis, you should change jobs. Ana, why don't you move closer? Carlos, that haircut doesn't suit you. Little phrases that, without knowing it, were building an invisible wall between her and her children. But why can unsolicited advice be so counterproductive? According to psychologist Dr. Maria Martinez, when we give unsolicited advice, we are sending the subliminal message that we don't trust the other person's ability to make decisions. Whoops! That wasn't what Elena wanted to convey, was it? The straw that broke the camel's back was when Luis, Elena's youngest son, decided to distance himself. The reason? He was fed up with constantly hearing how he should live his life. Ana, the middle daughter, began to avoid her mother's calls, and Carlos, the eldest, limited himself to responding with monosyllables when Elena started with her suggestions. Elena realized that something was wrong when she organized a family dinner and only Carlos showed up, who confessed that his brothers were avoiding these meetings. What a slap in the face of reality, but all is not lost. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgment of things." Elena decided to apply this wisdom to her situation. She began to practice the art of non-judgmental listening. Instead of jumping in with advice every time her children told her something, she started asking questions. How do you feel about it? Logically, what do you think would be best for you? Surprisingly, her children started seeking her out more often. A study conducted by the University of Michigan revealed that young adults whose parents respected their autonomy reported higher levels of satisfaction in their family relationships. Elena was on the right track. The key is to find the balance between being available to your children and respecting their ability to make their own decisions. As comedian Jerry Seinfeld would say, sometimes the best advice is no advice at all. Elena learned that her children didn't need a constant instruction manual, but a listening ear and a shoulder to lean on when they needed it. She began to enjoy deeper, more meaningful conversations with them, without the pressure of having to fix everything. Now, have you ever wondered if your words might be creating an invisible rift between your children? Imagine that every comparison is like a small stone that, without realizing it, is building a wall between siblings. Elena, our retired protagonist, was in a situation that many parents will recognize. With her 3 children, Luis, Ana, and Carlos, she believed she was distributing their love and attention equally. However, without realizing it, she had fallen into the trap of comparisons. "Luis, why can't you be more organized like Ana?" Logically, Elena often said. "Carlos, your older brother already had a job at your age." These seemingly harmless phrases were sowing seeds of resentment and rivalry between the siblings. Psychologist Abraham Maslow once said, "The healthiest way to raise a child is to help him develop his individuality." Elena was unknowingly doing the exact opposite. Her constant comparisons were eroding her children's self-esteem and creating tensions in the family dynamic. One day during a family dinner, the atmosphere became tense when Elena once again compared their children. Luis exploded, "It's always the same. Ana is the perfect one, Carlos is the successful one, and what about me, the family loser?" The silence that followed was deafening. This moment was a turning point for Elena. She realized that her words, far from motivating, were deeply hurting her children. The question is, how many parents fall into this trap without realizing it? A study conducted by the University of Illinois revealed that children who are frequently compared to their siblings tend to develop greater anxiety and self-esteem problems in adulthood. It is as if each comparison is a brick in an invisible wall separating siblings. Dr. Alfredo Oliva, an expert in developmental psychology, explains, comparisons between siblings can have devastating long-term effects. Not only do they affect the relationship between them, but also the perception they have of themselves. Elena, determined to change, sought professional help. She learned that each child is unique, with his or her own strengths and weaknesses. She began to practice what psychologists call specific praise, focusing on each child's individual accomplishments without comparing them to others. "Carlos, I am proud of how you persevered in finding a job you are passionate about," she was now saying. "Ana, your ability to organize your time is admirable. Luis, your creativity in the kitchen amazes me every day." These comments, specific and personalized, began to heal the wounds of the past. The change was not immediate, but over time, Elena noticed how the atmosphere at home was transformed. Siblings began to support each other instead of competing. Family dinners were filled with laughter instead of tension. As the Roman philosopher Seneca said, "Treat your inferior as you expect your superior to treat you." Elena applied this wisdom to her parenting, treating each child with the respect and individuality they deserved. The lesson is clear. Valuing each child's individuality not only strengthens their self-esteem, but also creates a healthier and more harmonious family environment. It's like growing a garden. Each flower needs its own space and care to bloom in all its splendor. Continuing on this theme, what about exaggerated expectations? Expectations are like balloons. If you inflate them too much, they pop. Elena, our beloved retiree, believed she was doing the right thing by dreaming big for her children. Luis, the frustrated artist, Ana, the future lawyer, and Carlos, the soon-to-be successful entrepreneur. But what happens when our wishes become a heavy backpack for our children? Imagine for a moment that you are Luis. Ever since you were a child, your mother has told you that you have a gift for painting. You'll be the next Picasso, she keeps telling you. But what if your true passion is music? Every brushstroke becomes a reminder of the expectations you're not living up to. The renowned psychologist Carl Jung once said, "The shoe that fits one person may be too tight for another." And boy, was he right. Elena's expectations, however well-intentioned, were squeezing her children's dreams until they were suffocating. A recent study revealed something surprising. Young people who face unreasonable expectations tend to experience higher levels of stress and anxiety. It's as if we were asking them to climb Everest in flip-flops, impossible and dangerous. Ana, Elena's perfect daughter, began to suffer from panic attacks before every exam. The pressure to be the best lawyer, even before she entered college, was consuming her. Sound familiar? Maybe you're not Elena, but I'm sure you know someone who has fallen into this trap. Elena was projecting her unrealized dreams onto her children, creating an emotional roller coaster for the entire family. Carlos, the youngest, decided to rebel. Instead of following the entrepreneurial path his mother had laid out for him, he enrolled in a cooking course. The disappointment in Elena's eyes was evident, but shouldn't she be proud that her son was following his true passion? It is as if we are giving our children a map to a treasure they are not looking for. Wouldn't it be better to give them a compass and let them find their own way? Psychologist Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, reminds us that true happiness comes from using our unique strengths. But how can our children discover their strengths if they are busy trying to meet our expectations? Elena had her moment of enlightenment during a family dinner. Luis announced that he had decided to quit painting and join a rock band. Instead of disappointment, Elena felt a mixture of relief and pride. Her son had found his true passion. This twist in the story teaches us a valuable lesson. Supporting our children's own dreams not only makes them happier, but also strengthens the family bond. It's like watering a plant. If you give it what it needs, it will bloom on its own. The famous pediatrician Dr. Spock once said, "Trust yourself. You know more than you think you do." Perhaps it's time we also trust our children and their ability to find their own way. Elena, our beloved retiree, was facing a new challenge. After years of giving her all for her children, she found herself in a situation that many parents dread, being taken for granted. Sound familiar? Well, brace yourself, because what Elena was about to discover would change her life forever. It all started when her youngest son, Carlos, asked to move into her house temporarily. "It'll only be a few months, Mom," he said. Elena, with her heart of gold, agreed without a second thought. But those months turned into a year, and before she knew it, Elena found herself doing laundry, cooking and cleaning for her 30-year-old son. The result? Elena felt more like a maid than a mother. Where was the line between maternal love and abuse of trust? As the philosopher Khalil Gibran once said, "Your children are not your children. They are sons and daughters of self-wishing life." But Elena was not alone in this situation. A study conducted by the University of Michigan revealed that 25 of retired parents experience some form of financial or emotional abuse from their adult children. Surprising, isn't it? Psychologist Dr. Laura Markham explains, "Unconditional love does not mean permissiveness without boundaries. In fact, setting healthy boundaries is a form of love." Who knew? It turns out that saying no can also be an act of love. Elena realized that her desire to help was actually hindering Carlos's growth. As the famous psychologist Carl Jung once said, "The shoe that fits one person squeezes another." Elena was so busy being the perfect mum that she didn't realize she was squeezing Carlos's opportunities for growth. So what did Elena do? She decided to have an honest conversation with Carlos. She explained that, although she loved him unconditionally, they needed to set some boundaries. Carlos's reaction? Surprisingly positive. It turns out that he, too, felt trapped in this dynamic and didn't know how to get out of it. Together, they worked out a plan. Carlos would begin to contribute to the household expenses and take care of his own household chores. Elena, for her part, pledged not to interfere in Carlos's decisions and to give him the space he needed to grow. The result? A healthier and more balanced relationship. Elena regained her independence and Carlos learned valuable lessons about responsibility and autonomy. This experience teaches us a valuable lesson. True love includes setting clear boundaries. It's not about not loving or supporting our children, but doing so in a way that fosters their growth and autonomy. Great. But have you ever felt that despite your best efforts, something is still missing in your relationship with your children? Elena was about to discover that the real wisdom sometimes hides in the most unexpected places. Who would have thought that your neighbor Don Javier was keeping an ancient secret that would change your perspective forever? Elena, with a heavy heart and a mind full of doubts, decided to seek advice. She crossed the street and knocked on the door of Don Javier, her enigmatic neighbor. "Don Javier, I need your help," Elena said in a trembling voice. "I feel like I'm losing connection with my children." Don Javier, with a serene smile, invited her in. "Elena, you've come to the right place. Did you know that the ancient Stoics had a lot to say about parenting?" Elena blinked in surprise. Stoics? What did ancient philosophers have to do with her modern problems? "You see," Don Javier continued, "the Stoics believed in the concept of love with detachment. Sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But it's like holding a bird in your hand. If you squeeze it too hard, you hurt it. If you let go of it completely, it goes away. The trick is to hold it firmly but allow it the freedom to fly." Elena listened in fascination. Don Javier explained how the philosopher Epictetus taught that we cannot control what happens, only how we react to it. "Think of your children as saplings," Don Javier said. "Your job is not to grow for them, but to create the right environment for them to flourish on their own." "But how can I let you face difficulties?" asked Elena. Don Javier smiled. Marcus Aurelius once said, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." Allowing your children to face challenges is like vaccinating them against life's difficulties. Elena looked thoughtful. "Are you saying I should stop helping them?" Don Javier shook his head. "No, Elena. Stoic love is not cold or distant. It is a love that recognizes the individuality and responsibility of each person. It is like being the wind beneath your wings, not the pilot of your plane. Elena's mind was spinning. These ideas challenged everything she thought she knew about maternal love. Don Javier continued, Seneca taught us that the greatest wealth is to live content with little. Don't you think that by giving your children everything, you might be depriving them of the satisfaction of earning it for themselves? Elena remembered all the times she had solved her children's problems, inadvertently depriving them of valuable lessons. But how can I start to change, she asked. Don Javier suggested she start with small steps. The next time your child asks you for help, instead of solving the problem for him or her, ask, what do you think you should do? You'll be surprised at how capable they are. As Elena prepared to leave, Don Javier gave her one last piece of advice. Remember, Elena, true love is not possessive. It's like the sun. It shines for everyone, but it doesn't demand anything in return. Elena was at a crossroads. After years of giving her all for her children, she realized she needed a radical change. With determination, she came up with a plan that would transform not only her life, but that of her entire family. Can you imagine reinventing your relationship with your adult children? Well, that's exactly what Elena set out to do. Elena's first step was to set clear boundaries. She decided that she would no longer be the fixer of all her children's problems. As psychologist Carl Rogers once said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself as I am, then I can change. Elena understood that by ceasing to constantly intervene, she was giving her children the opportunity to grow. When Elena communicated her new rules, reactions were mixed. Luis, the artist, was confused. Ana, the lawyer, was relieved. And Carlos, the budding chef, resisted at first. But Mom, you've always been there for us, he protested. Elena replied with a smile, and I always will be, but in a different way. The philosopher Seneca said, it is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult. Elena held on to this idea as she faced the initial challenges. There were moments of doubt and tension, but she stood firm in her decision. One day, Anna called in desperation because she had lost an important case in court. Instead of offering her solutions, Elena asked, what do you think you can learn from this experience? This simple question opened a profound dialogue between mother and daughter, strengthening their relationship in a way Elena could never have imagined. Psychologist Carol Dweck, in her theory of growth mindset, states that a person's true potential is unlocked when they face challenges and learn from them. Elena was putting this idea into practice, allowing her children to develop resilience and self-confidence. Over time, Elena began to notice subtle but significant changes. Luis, who used to depend on her to make decisions, began to trust his own judgment more. Carlos, surprisingly, began inviting her to dinner, cooking elaborate dishes himself. Mom, I want to give you back some of everything you've given me, he told her one day, bringing tears of joy to Elena's eyes. A recent study from the University of Michigan revealed that young adults with empowering parents have higher levels of life satisfaction. Elena was seeing these results firsthand in her children. The transformation wasn't easy or quick, but every little bit of progress was a victory. A year after Elena decided to change her approach to her relationship with her children, the transformation in the family was palpable. Carlos, the son who had temporarily moved in with her, was now living in his own apartment and had successfully launched his catering business. Anna, the perfect budding lawyer, had discovered her true passion for psychology and was pursuing a master's degree in family therapy. And Luis, the frustrated artist, was now playing in a local band with growing popularity. But the changes were not limited to professional accomplishments. Elena's new attitude, based on setting healthy boundaries and encouraging independence, had strengthened family ties in a way she could never have imagined. As psychologist Carl Rogers once said, the only learning that can significantly influence behavior is that which the individual discovers and incorporates for himself. Elena had learned this lesson the hard way, but the results spoke for themselves. Family dinners, once tense and full of veiled comparisons, had become moments of genuine connection. At one such gathering, Luis laughingly remarked, Remember when Mom insisted that I would be the next Picasso? Well, it turns out I'm more Mick Jagger than Van Gogh, and I couldn't be happier. This new family dynamic had not only improved individual relationships, but also created an atmosphere of mutual support. Anna, for example, was using her knowledge of psychology to help with the marketing strategy for Carlos's business. Elena had finally understood the deeper meaning of these words. By letting go of the reins and allowing her children to find their own way, she had discovered a more authentic and fulfilling way to be a mother. A recent Harvard University study revealed that young adults who grew up in environments that fostered autonomy and responsibility were 40% more likely to report high levels of life satisfaction. Elena was seeing these results firsthand, but perhaps the most significant change was in Elena herself. She no longer felt responsible for solving all of her children's problems or running their lives. Instead, she had become a source of support and wisdom, someone her children turned to for advice, but not for magical solutions. As she reflected in her diary, "The real gift I can give my children is not money, property, or instant solutions. It is self-confidence, the ability to face their own challenges, and the assurance that I will always be here to support them, but not to live their lives for them." This transformation had not been easy. There were moments of doubt, heated discussions, and tears shed. But as psychologist Viktor Frankl once said, when we cannot change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And that is exactly what Elena and her family had accomplished. Elena learned that it's not about unlimited money, giving away property, or solving all her problems, nor is it about giving unsolicited advice, comparing children, or having exaggerated expectations. The real gift is to teach them independence and responsibility while giving them love with healthy boundaries. As psychologist Abraham Maslow said, the healthiest way to raise a child is to help him develop his individuality. Think about your own family. Are you giving your children the tools to fly, or are you keeping them in a gilded cage? Remember, true love is not doing everything for them, but preparing them so they can do it for themselves. If you've made it this far, write "true love" in the comments so I know who the victors are that made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content like this in the future. Share this video with your loved ones so they can implement this wisdom starting today. And consider supporting the channel by becoming an exclusive member. I'll leave the link in the commentary for you to check out. By the way, I am writing an ebook that is not yet finished, but will be available soon. I will let you know when it is ready, and I will share the link so you can purchase it. Now click on this video to continue nourishing your mind with wisdom. A big hug, and see you next time.